From the golden period of Mexican film to Hollywood, Katie Herado enthralled viewers with her beauty and brilliance. She married actor Ernest Borgnine, but she dubbed Louis L'Amour the man of her life, exposing a highly intimate and emotional part of her biography that many admirers never understood. Herado proved her flexibility and depth in her revolutionary performances and critical praise, cementing her position in cinema history. Her roles in High Noon and Broken Lance broke down Hollywood's restrictions for Mexican women and left an enduring impression. Katie's legacy is one of tenacity and skill despite her complicated love life and typecasting. We explore Katie Herado's intriguing life, highlighting her accomplishments and personal disclosures. This remarkable Mexican actress defied expectations and made an indelible mark on film. In the beginning, her family just called her Katie when she was young, since so many family names were associated with her original name. Herado was born in 1924 to Vicenta Garcia and Luis Herado Ochoa in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. Her mother was an opera singer who gave up singing when she got married, and her father, Ochoa, was a lawyer, cattle rancher, and owner of an orange grove. For most of their lifetimes, the Herados were extraordinarily rich and owned much of what is now Texas. Herado lost most of his fortune and much of their property during the Mexican Revolution. Between 1910 and 1920, the Mexican Revolution persisted for an entire decade, ultimately leading to a constitutional republic in place of the 30-year dictatorship that had ruled Mexico. The wealthy were most severely impacted throughout the protracted conflict, severely damaging the economy. She took matters into her own hands. Katie had to learn the art of rebelling fast when she was raised in an affluent home. Her parents were well off and disapproved of acting as a vocation. After a while, Herado caught the eye of renowned Mexican actor Emilio Fernandez, who requested her to feature in his film Isle of Passion. Katie's parents would not have been able to resist the offer of starring in the movie. They attempted instantly to crush her hopes and prevented her from appearing in the film. Fortunately, she had several intentions for her life for those of the world who would come to adore her. By using forgeries, she managed to get past her parents' objections. Herado was sadly forced to pass up the opportunity to act in the Isle of Passion, but she was eager to get started on the following movie, No Mataras. She was a gorgeous, fiery bombshell. When Katie Herado ran away to marry Victor Velasquez at 14, she went one step further in her rebelliousness. Like Katie, he was an actor with high aspirations. After falling in love at first sight, the couple married in 1939 amid a wild early adolescent period marked by art, amusement, hardships, and a shared desire to express their rebellious tendencies. Herado understood she had sex appeal, and that her exotic appearance attracted attention wherever she went. I knew that my body was provocative, but also that I was not beautiful, although my physique was different and very sensual. She was a vibrant young lady with stunning brown hair and large brown eyes. She was the talk of the town with her olive complexion, and even though she didn't believe she was pretty, she was stunning. She was the epitome of a hustler. With her finger in every pie, Katie Herado was one of the busiest ladies in the area. While filming her debut film, she wrote columns about movies, worked as a radio reporter, and wrote pieces as a bullfighting critic. The lady was determined to leave her imprint on the world and never sat idle. She was renowned for being very theatrical and short-tempered, and with the good came the bad. As a fiery Latino, we can't claim to be all that shocked. They are renowned for their ability to flare up and balance the calm, which is a much-needed attribute. Her marriage failed due to everything going on around her, and by the age of 19, she had already filed for divorce. This was a total down compared to the extreme high that followed the success of her first movie, No Mataras, in 1943. She broke the stereotype. Despite their early age, Herado and Velasquez had 2 children while married. Victor Hugo was their son, and Sandra was their daughter. Herado is said to have been a devoted mother who made extra efforts for her kids, even if she didn't have much time for them. Eventually, Herado defied the stereotypes that Mexican women were traditionally assigned. the sexualized, I'm here only to be sexualized sort of woman. She didn't merely stand on film and look hot. Her performances had depth and much more. Though she continued to portray many of these femme fatale roles, and they continued to accentuate her beautiful looks, she would eventually gain respect and recognition for herself and expand the variety of roles open to other Mexican women. It wasn't her acting that got her into Hollywood films. Herado's breakthrough performance in the film made her the it girl of acting. Herado acted in an astounding 16 additional movies in the following 7 years. Studios fiercely competed with one another to cast Herado in their films. She later won an Ariel, the Mexican equivalent of an Oscar, for her role in El Bruto. She rose to fame during what was known as the Golden Age of Mexican cinema, and her entry into Hollywood was undoubtedly unique. You see, it wasn't exactly her acting that brought her to Hollywood. Instead, it was her second career as a bullfight critic. While working at a bull ring, Herado was noticed by the great John Wayne and Bud Buttigieg, whose casting of her in The Bullfighter and the Lady in 1951 was based solely on appearance. Her breakthrough role came soon after the John Wayne film. Her lack of English proficiency when she first entered the entertainment industry may have hurt other actresses, but it didn't hurt Herado. Instead, it inspired her to find more genuine solutions to the problems she faced to advance her career, such as learning her lines etymologically, like a parrot. Eventually, her perseverance paid off, and she was cast in what would become her most significant role to date, High Noon, as producer Stanley Kramer saw her alongside big names like Grace Kelly and Gary Cooper. Despite the intense pressure to perform with celebrities and raise her profile, she declined to keep her mouth shut, losing her temper with the director on the film set of High Noon. Katie Herado lost her cool in Hollywood for the second time while filming High Noon. She noticed that the director was using close-up shots of Grace Kelly more often, and this time Herado wouldn't settle for anything less than the best. She threw a fit and angrily declared that the director was half in love with the blonde actress. Interestingly, these outbursts of rage were similar to the character traits that Katie Herado was cast to play, a fiery, hot-tempered brunette who occasionally displayed bursts of passion and anger. The first time Herado lost her cool was during an audition when the director laughed at her for not speaking English properly. Midway through the audition, Herado stormed out of the room, loudly berating the director in her mother tongue, the Mexican's Spitfire's Spanish. Herado's love life was also fiery. Being the bombshell she was, Herado never lacked admirers or suitors. However, she knew exactly how to play the game. Herado was rumored to have dated renowned actors Tyrone Power and Bud Buttigieg. She was also the target of several well-known singers, the most famous of whom was Frank Sinatra, who the Latina babe turned down because she considered him just a friend. Maybe she had learned her lesson about dating musicians. After her debut film's release, Herado was approached by Marlon Brando, who was filming a movie in Mexico. Herado accepted, and the two began their highly publicized relationship. Brando didn't hold back when expressing his feelings for his new Latina partner. The first Latin American actress to win a Golden Globe. Katie Herado made history as the first Latin American woman to win a Golden Globe for her role as Helen Ramirez in the movie High Noon. She was also the talk of the Hollywood A-list, and her new relationship with fellow A-lister Marlon Brando made her even more desirable, even though they had some common challenges. Brando was very open about his affection for the Latina bombshell, especially regarding her eyes, which were his favorite feature. He once said, "Her enigmatic eyes fascinate me because they are black as hell, pointing at you like fiery arrows." Herado took that as a compliment. She loved being praised so widely, especially in her eyes. A leopard never changes his spots. Herado acted awfully cool throughout it all. She knew of his affairs and made nothing of it. Besides, two could play this game. Brando also stayed true to his colors and saw many other women while dating the two. He not only dated two women simultaneously, but also saw many other women while dating the two. Movida Castaneda was one of the women he was seeing while with Herado. Rita Moreno was the other. I never intended to wed him. Herado and Brando continued their intermittent romance, which peaked and ended shortly after the 1960 filming of Brando's feature One-Eyed Jack. Their relationship appeared to be strictly platonic, as they found new marriage partners while continuing to see each other. They remained friends. Though she wasn't the first choice for the role, Herado played Spencer Tracy in the 1954 Western film Broken Lance, for which she received an Academy Award nomination. Brando and Herado continued their spiritual connection, calling each other soul friends. They may not have been married, but their relationship was very deep. We speak soul to soul. No one knew exactly what went on between them, other than seeing them together in front of the cameras. They remained close for the rest of their lives, even though they married other people. Their deep connection prevented them from ever getting married, but it kept them apart from each other's lives. By the time they found their significant others, they had ended their sexual relations. Her role as Tracy in Broken Lance was initially written for Dolores Del Rio. Herado was destined for Hollywood, but chose to stay true to her roots, heritage, and culture. She rejected a contract by so many directors to work in Hollywood. Herado was a Mexican woman and actress, and a very proud one. Directors thought Herado was too young for the role, but footage of her performance convinced them otherwise. She owned the role with incredible grace and confidence, which led to her Academy Award. Fortunately for Herado, Dolores was denied a visa for entering the United States due to rumors of her involvement in communist activity. At this point, Del Rio had developed close relations with Frida Kahlo. Herado and Borgnine met on the set of The Badlanders. Herado was known for having a voracious appetite for men. She was the fiery Latina who frequently toyed with the idea of a forever partner. While working on The Badlanders, Herado began dating a co-star named Ernest Borgnine. Borgnine was married, and their affair turned into a messy situation as time went on, and their attraction to each other grew. Rumors about the two erupted into a media frenzy when they were seen cuddling and exhibiting signs of innocent affection. Borgnine's wife took the reporter's word for it and filed for divorce shortly after, so nothing stood in the way of the two lustful relationships. The little bull and the tiger did not get along. They tied the knot in 1959, but it did not change their relationship status. Borgnine started showing severe jealousy and insecurities, slowly but surely ruining everything between them. Herado eventually gave Borgnine the nickname Bullito, meaning young bull, and Borgnine called her Beautiful Tiger. These might have only been nicknames, but they played out. Herado had a different recollection of the evolution of their romantic relationship. According to her, Borgnine tried to pursue her for 2 years after meeting in a restaurant. This recollection is entirely different from the reports of their affair that were blurted out in the tabloids, of course. The truth behind their divorce. Two bad tempers don't make a right, especially in a marriage. Herado claimed her husband was extremely cruel. She said as much when she finally filed for divorce. The divorce was one of the most tragic events in Herado's life. Their volatile marriage turned into an abusive escapade filled with fistfights and screaming matches, the complete opposite of how it first started. It turned out that the dark rumors spreading across Tinseltown were all, in fact, true. The volatile had both parties kicking and screaming like children who didn't want to leave the candy shop, and despite being poisoned by one another, they briefly rekindled their flame in 1963 before calling it quits for good. Herado still faced many personal demons. Unfortunately, neither party wanted the divorce, so Herado entered the courtroom on June 3, 1963, to find Borgnine had not even bothered to show up. Eventually, though, Herado was able to obtain the $40,000 divorce settlement she needed to be a free and happy woman once more, and she immediately began putting the pieces of her mental and emotional health back together. The only place she knew how or where to do this was back home in Mexico. After spending 2 years there, she returned to the United States and appeared in numerous hit films throughout Hollywood, even sharing the screen with Elvis Presley. Despite her enormous success, Herado was still struggling with emotional demons she could not quite conquer. More tragedy was yet to come. Before suffering the heartbreaking loss of a loved one in an automobile accident, she was also the first to encounter Miroslava Stern after her suicide. Born on February 26, 1926, Miroslava Sternova-Bekova, like Herado, made a name for herself as a foreign actress in Hollywood. Stern, a fellow Czechoslovak-Mexican actress, committed suicide on March 9, 1955, while holding a photo of a special someone in her hand. Herado claimed that Stern's manager had replaced the picture of the special someone in her hand with a bullfighter. This led to further scandals in their Hollywood circles, but most significantly, Herado claimed that it altered Stern's motivation for suicide, which was far worse than anything else surroundings. Katie Herado tried to take her own life. Herado, like Miroslava Sternova-Bekova, attempted suicide, but fortunately for everyone who loved her, it was unsuccessful, and many saw it as just a cry for help. She was in complete despair over a particular tragedy she had experienced, one that was far more devastating than discovering the body of her fellow actress, Stern. Herado overdosed on sleeping pills, but before they claimed her life, she called her agent, telling him sternly to give away all of her furs and money to her children, and then she hung up. She wasn't bluffing. Her agent promptly called paramedics to Herado's residence, where they discovered the actress semi-conscious, lying on the floor after swallowing a handful of sleeping pills. The devastating blow. Herado was a tremendously gifted woman whose personality and beauty spilled into songs and paintings. In 1953, the renowned artist Diego Rivera painted a portrait of the stunning Herado. Her significance was captured exquisitely by those who were fortunate enough to have momentarily captured a piece of her for their art. Years after the painting, Herado became the subject of a well-known song titled Que Rachula es Katie, which translates to, "What a beauty is Katie." Regrettably, no amount of beauty and wealth can shield one from some of life's most terrible occurrences. The Mexican beauty suffered an appalling hand of tragedy, and her only child, Victor Hugo, was one of her two children with her ex-husband. Burying a child goes against the laws of nature. Victor Hugo Velázquez was Herado's first child and her son. The accident happened in 1981 on a highway near Monterrey, and she didn't find out about his death until she got back to the United States. Her acting career almost ended as a result of his death, as she didn't want to continue, but worse, she had to return home immediately after her son's funeral because she felt she couldn't properly grieve for him, and soon she was drowning in regret. Looking back on this time in her life, Herado said, "I couldn't mourn him as I wanted. I wasted a great moment I should have spent with my kids at the movies, but it was too late." Herado stepped away from filming. After completing the filming she was compelled to complete while grieving the loss of Victor Hugo, Herado took a 3-year hiatus from acting. She believed her career was over, but John Huston persuaded her to return to Hollywood and pursue her passion. After much discussion, Herado was cast in Huston's most recent film, Under the Volcano. This was all it took for Herado's heart to rekindle and for her to resume her career in the film industry. Following her return, she continued to act until the day of her passing. She was dubbed in every genre of film, television dramas, comedies, theater productions, and even comedy. Her efforts culminated in her appearances on Broadway twice before granted a star on Hollywood's Walk of Fame. Better late than never? Herado held on to all of the romantic love letters he wrote to her. Louis L'Amour wrote best-selling Western novels, many adapted into films. He also wrote nonfiction, historical fiction, and a collection of poetry and short stories. Ultimately, he became widely known for his Western hits. He brought to life the American frontier, a world filled with cowboys, gunslingers, Indians, and Texas Rangers. He was the love and stable excitement Herado needed and loved. Herado was the first Mexican woman to win all the awards. She was a pioneer, and throughout her life, she also achieved something more special than just awards and award nominations. Herado also became the first Mexican woman to hold the keys to New York City. Her excellent taste in roles got her that far. She admitted to not accepting every role that came her way. "I didn't take all the films offered, just those with dignity." She stayed true to her roots and ethnic bloodline. Her fellow Mexican people were also very proud of her for planting the Mexican flag in the U.S. film industry. She received 3 Silver Ariel Awards, a nomination for and triumph at the Golden Globes, and an Oscar nomination. She established the standard for actors from Mexico who aspired to be like her in the future. Her blood made her a fighter. Up to the day of her death, she battled every illness, including the ones that ultimately took her life. She continued to work till she passed away. Herado battled heart and lung problems as she aged, and at the time she died, she was 78 years old. She had renal failure and lung illness. Her last movie role was released posthumously, and her family arranged for her remains to be interred in Mexico. July 5, 2002 was the day Katie Herado passed away in Cuernavaca, Mexico. Herado was interred at the Panteón de la Paz Cemetery in Cuernavaca, and her monument receives many visitors. She created an incredible legacy in the film business, one of the best any Mexican woman has ever accomplished. Herado had an incredibly big impression on the globe.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon